Hi, today I'll be sharing with you the principle and application of psychological first aid. Psychological management of crisis or psychological first aid. There is actually no one single model of crisis intervention. There is common agreement on the general principles to alleviate the acute distress of victims, to restore independent functioning, and to prevent or mitigate the aftermath of psychological trauma. So when we start psychological first aid, first is that we need to intervene immediately. By definition, crises are emotionally hazardous situations that take place, victims at high risk for maladaptive coping. The second principle is to stabilize the victim. One important immediate goal is the stabilization of the victims or the victim community, actively mobilizing resources and support networks to restore some resemblance of order and routine. Such a mobilization provides the needed tools for victims to begin to function independently. Third principle is to facilitate understanding. This is another important step in restoring victims to pre-crisis level of functioning. Is actually to facilitate their understanding of what has occurred. This is accomplished by gathering the facts about what has occurred, listening to the victims recount events, encouraging the expression of difficult emotions, and helping them understand the impact of the critical event. The next principle is to focus on problem solving, where actively assisting victims to use available resources to regain control is an important strategy here. Assisting the victim in solving problems within the context of what the victim feels is possible enhances the independent functioning. The next principle is on encourage self-reliance. So akin to the active problem solving is actually the emphasis on restoring self-reliance in victims as an additional means to restore independent functioning and to address the aftermath of traumatic events. Victims should be assisted in assessing the problems at hand, in developing practical strategies to address those problems, and in fielding those strategies to restore a more normal equilibrium. So we must understand that there are three factors that is considered important as agent of change in crisis procedures. First is ventilation and abstraction. Second is social support. And third is adaptive coping. So an ability to share the negative emotional impact of a traumatic event is seen as an important step in recovery. Being able to share the horror of these critical incidents permits the victim to share the fear, to understand the impact of the event, and begin the process of independent functioning. Similarly, social support networks provide victims with support, companionship, information, and instrumental assistance in beginning again. While adaptive coping is the third likely agent of change, and it includes both cognitive and behavioral skills with an emphasis on information gathering, cognitive appraisal, reasonable expectations of performance, and skill acquisitions. Communication skills for psychological first aid should include: first, try to find a quiet place to talk and minimize outside distractions. Second, respect privacy and keep the person's story confidential if this is appropriate. Third, Stay near the person, but keep an appropriate distance depending on their age, gender, and culture. Fourth, to let them know you are listening. For example, you can nod your head. Fifth, be patient and calm. Six, provide factual information if you have it, but be honest about what you know and what you don't know. If you don't know, then you should say, I don't know, but I will try to find out about that for you. Point number 7, give information in a way the person can understand by keeping it simple. Number 8, acknowledge how they are feeling and any losses or important events they tell you about, such as loss of their home or death of a loved one. You can say something like, for example, I'm sorry, I can imagine this is very sad for you. Point number 9, acknowledge the person's strengths and how they have helped themselves. Number 10, you should allow for silence. Help people to feel calm. Keep your tone of voice calm and soft. And if culturally appropriate, try to maintain some eye contact with the person as you talk to them. Number 3, remind the person that you are there to help them and remind them that you are safe and it is actually true. They are actually now in a safe place. Point number 4, if someone feels unreal or disconnected from their surroundings, you may help them to make contact with their current environment and themselves. You can actually do this by asking them to place and feel their feet on the floor, tap their fingers or hands on their lap. Notice some non-distressing things in their environment, such as things that can see, hear, or feel. Have them tell you what they see and hear. You should also encourage the person to focus on their breathing and to breathe slowly. While for the case of encouraging positive coping, you should always inform the victim that you should get enough rest. You should eat regularly as possible and drink water. Talk and spend time with family and friends. Discuss problems with someone you trust. Do activities that help you relax, such as walking, singing, praying, or even playing with children. Number 6, they should always execute and conduct physical exercise. Number 7, find safe ways to help others in the crisis and get involved in community activities. And at the same time, you should also discourage negative copings, such as advise the victims not to take any drugs, smoking or drinking alcohol, and not to engage in not sleeping all day. Ask them don't work all the time without any rest or relaxation. Don't isolate yourself from friends and loved ones. Don't neglect basic personal hygiene. Don't be violent. In addition to that, crisis and spirituality also play an important role here, where someone should be aware of and respect the person's religious background. And number 2, ask the person what generally helps them to feel better. Encourage them to do things that help them to cope, including spiritual routines if they mention this to you. And point number 3, listen respectfully and without judgment to spiritual beliefs or questions the person may have. And number 4, don't impose your beliefs or spiritual or religious interpretations of the crisis on the person who experience the trauma. Number 5, don't agree with or reject a spiritual belief or interpretation of the crisis, even if the person asks you to do so.